Hello to you all. First of all, I would like to say that I am Pereira-Sampaio, the current president of the World Association of Veterinary Anatomists. It's a pleasure to have you here. I have no camera. Just a minute. Okay. Then I am Pereira-Sampaio, the current president of the World Association of Veterinary Anatomists. It's a pleasure to have you here. Despite the different time zones attending the first WAVA meeting, as you know, WAVA members had always met during meetings of other associations, but this time, due to the pandemic crisis, ironically, we had the opportunity to have our own meeting, which is being attended by anatomists and students from 32 countries. Considering this, we realize that a crisis is also a time for new opportunities and a great field for new ideas. And it's exactly the aim of this meeting, where we can share our experience and expectations concerning teaching veterinary anatomy in these difficult times. I would like to thank you, Dr. Robert Henry, our former WAVA president and current treasurer, who will be the chairperson with me, the scientific committee, and the students who are working in our technical support. I also thank the invited speakers, the ones who sent abstracts for oral presentations, and the attendants. So, to avoid wasting time, let's begin. Then, it's my pleasure to introduce for the first presentation, Professor Claudia Wolschrijn, Associate Professor of Utrecht University from Netherlands, and also President of the European Association of Veterinary Anatomists. Claudia, it's your time. You can open your microphone in your screen. Claudia?
Yes, I'm here. The problem is that the screen now is away.
Okay.
Which was working in a minute. Just okay. Oh, this is a nice one. I don't see my screen anymore, so I just do it differently. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear and I can see your presentation.
You can see my presentation as well?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't see it myself, so that's a nice situation we're having here. Well, thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you for pronouncing my name right. And thank you very much for the opportunity for organizing this and for giving us the opportunity to share our ideas, show what we come from. But let's not forget that it's a very sad occasion why we are having the first WAVA meeting, and my thoughts are with those who are or were suffering from the disease or who lost loved ones and friends and family members. Well, let's go to work then. Yeah, we had to change over the weekend as well. Do you see, sorry for the, but do you see my next slide?
Yes.
Yes.
You can see the presentation mode.
Yeah. Okay. We had to change over the weekend, as the majority of us all had to, and that turned us on. We got in the fight, flight, fright mode, and that's how we did. And what I first will show you are the things that we did the past couple of months, and then I will go over the real title of the presentation, the dissection of the learning outcomes. So how should we proceed further? So we continued more or less face-to-face teaching, and we used Microsoft Teams mostly. We have this content management system, Blackboard. I'm still using that. And could, when possible, and that was especially for our master students, postpone the practical part. So we had quite some master student teaching, fourth-year students, and what we basically did was split the teaching into a theoretical part, which was offered through Microsoft Teams, and knowing that somewhere in summertime, we at that time hoped, but in the meantime we've done that, give them the real practical part as well. And we worked in Microsoft Teams, also in Google Docs. And this is a screenshot of the Google Docs. And every color is a student. And as a teacher, we could continuously look at it. We didn't, but we just peeked in every now and then and could see what they were doing. And what I particularly liked of this type of working was not that I was really pleased with all the answers, and I'm really glad that it's in Dutch and that you can't understand it. Maybe some viewers, but what I particularly liked, and that's what you see in the yellow circle, is that it says there, yes, I thought so too, translated then, meaning that they are actually discussing on paper or in writing what they are thinking, and there you can see the real discussion taking place. And as a teacher, you also learn much more from that than a final Word document that you could get at the end of a session. So that's why I really like this one, because you can follow the learning process and you see that they are starting to appreciate what has been said, or what is on pictures, or what is in a program much better. We used lectures from last year. They were not standardly, they are standardly recorded, so that's we just had to open them up again. From that Google Docs, some aspects students really didn't get or didn't understand or had questions about. And at the end of each session, I got an email saying, okay, could you please clarify this or this or that? And then we would record a PowerPoint file saying, well, what it is about, in this case, the pelvic diaphragm. And, well, for anybody doing this, it's quite hard to get your pointer on so that the students actually can see what you're pointing on when you're telling something. What did we do more? Well, we already had some knowledge clips, so these short films of 10, 15 minutes explaining what everything was about. We already had made quite some e-learning programs up and running. I was really glad that the one that we made last year was more or less, or started to make last year, was more or less finished when this pandemic started. And we could perfectly use it in the master teaching program that we had to run. So that was partly PIC anatomy. This is the first screen, and this is an overview of what is in there for details. And the students can just study names and structures, hands and forth, so they can click on the names and then they will see what will light up, or they will click on a structure and double click, they will see the name of the structure. So they can really rehearse, learn themselves, rehearse themselves, and so on. Okay, what did we do more? Again, we made videos of practicals that we couldn't give. These are some stills of that, and just short ones to present the highlights of what we thought it was important and that they could use to fulfill other tasks or assignments that we asked from them. We had to have online examinations, even the smaller ones we couldn't give on campus, to avoid that the total amount of the mark had to come from an online exam without any surveillance. We gave extra summative assignments, which was added up to the results of the online exam. And they were, the students had to upload them through Blackboard, and there was a plagiarism control check on that. So, that was more or less safe. And I was really surprised to see how well the students did on that. It was about development and definitive anatomy of, for instance, the liver, and I was really surprised how well they did. What I got back as essays, and also that it's some were really original in things they thought, found, and wrote that down. And we did some anatomical recognition exams also online. They were extra exams for students who had to have 1 or 2 exams left before they would get their final diploma. And so we made them online, or the students made them online, and we presented them online. And I must say that the results the students got from that were more or less comparable with the results we would have had if we would give it on campus. So I never did it online. Literature says that you can do it and that the results are more or less comparable. But now I also experienced that is, in this case, was the case. And when we were allowed to go back, at least the team responsible for making the plastinates, we've worked further on the development of the plastinates. Not that we can use them if we're all working from home, but we can use them creating, let's say, new e-learning programs, or if we are a little bit out of this acute situation, that we can go back to the skills lab and that students can work with them and learn their anatomy with the plastinates. So that was what we did, and that was quite much because we were already used to work with quite some different types of teaching materials. We are quite used to not focus really on lecturing. We do have lectures, but not so many, and it took a lot of energy, but we also got a lot of energy back because the students really appreciated what we did. And that was, of course, because it was the second semester, the third and the fourth period. It was mostly second and third and fourth year students, though they know who we are and they know how we work and they know what we expect from them if they are in a class, and they know what to expect when we were examining them. And so we worked for them and they really worked for us. And it's nice to receive sometimes compliments through mail or through the team sessions that was really appreciated. We also got as a feedback that if we want to have the communication running, and that they want that we shouldn't make the groups too large. So the whole of the cohort, so the 200 plus students in one team meeting, that's not something that is advisable, because then they don't feel heard. They can't you can raise hands in Teams, but it doesn't really work because you lose the overview. You don't only see the 9 students that talk last, and they get back and into to get back into anonymity. That's not a word, but anonymous. So we had to make, or we will make, the teams small, and as small is in our case just a tutorial groups of 25. If we will run out of staff to serve them, then we will maximize that up to 50. But that is then really the most, and we will say why we have to do that. So yes, students were quite happy with what we did. Most of the learning outcomes could be realized, but that was then also due to the fact that we were allowed to teach again in July for small groups. And so that was nice. And if you look then at literature, and if we go just make a little jump to what was really the title of my presentation, then you see all kinds of papers coming out in the beginning of the pandemic, and now in the run of the pandemic. And these two that really, thought were really nice. The first one from Longhurst et al. Have this inquiry in many schools, medical schools in the UK, and they really looked at all. What did they do? How did they experience it? What went well? What went wrong? How did staff feel about it? And of course, we have to see what it will do on the long run. But it's a really nice piece of work that I think, if you would read it through, or will read it through, you can see, this is something. This might be of help for choices that you have to make for the next term and the next season. The other one, that's. From Denmark and Calgary. It's not specifically on anatomy, but it's more on making choices. And they have this scheme in, if you would choose for this, would you reach everything that you want to reach? What is it that you can't reach? Can you do that via a different way? If not, is it a problem that you can't reach that goal you're aiming for, etc., etc. And it really brings it back nicely in, at least my chaotic minds at sometimes. So from next week on, so not Monday, but the Monday ahead, we have a new term, and then we have to deal with that our classroom capacity is 1/3 of the normal one. So if we would run a tutorial, then it would only be 8 or 9 students at the max. So all the tutorials will be run online. If you would think of lecturing, that will be done online. And also practicals, most of them will also be at 1/3 of the capacity. Meaning that if you looking at your own campus teaching, then you will notice or work with that your campus time is really precious, and that you need that for finalizing that bit of the learning outcomes that can only be reached on campus. No matter how long you're thinking and rethinking if it could be different. And what we also have to think of is that our new first-year students that will come in in 2 weeks, they also might need a different approach. And if you would look at our schedules, you will see that we are actually giving theoretical tutorials to these new students in groups of 8 to 9, and we have 2 or 3 a little bit larger rooms for tutorials. So then we just split them into the groups, and then we don't have to give it. We can't give it 9 times, but then we have to give it 18 times, or in the worst case, 27 times. And with all the the teaching taking place, those first year students, they always get the priority in the scheduling. Okay, dissecting learning outcomes. What do I mean with that? It is more or less, you have this learning outcome, and with this learning outcome, you have learning goals. So you have to realize, okay, what are the specific learning outcomes I'm aiming for in this module, or in this course, or in this topographical anatomy part, or is it topographical anatomy or not? And then you have to get that in smaller pieces and thinking, okay, what are now the specific learning goals that I want to reach, or need to reach, or what the students need to reach, of course. And what is an important question in that is, okay, what do we ask them to do during an assessment? Because that is what they have to know, or to perform, or to act, or to think of, or whatever. So that is really important to do. And if you don't think of your learning goals, and I just put some things on, and you look at, well, let's say you have to know something of the nomenclature of that specific part. Well, it's not really to learn important to have that on campus. I mean, that's not important to have that in a practical and studying the nomenclature. That is something that the students should do at home, and they can take a book for that, or they can take the booklet if they wanted to from the WAVA, or they can use one of the e-learning programs, or whatever. There are many ways to reach the goal of learning all the names that are part of that course. Well, also we want the relationship between form and function, and of course vascularization and innervation as well. Well, you can come quite far in again by reading. You are using a reader or an e-learning program, or something online, something virtual. It is quite possible to come quite far in the form and function grabbing. The relationship with other organs as well. It is, of course, nicer to have that in a dissection hall, because then you can, for instance, put it aside. If you put aside the intestines, then you will see what is underneath it, for instance. But the beginning, you can learn in a different way. And if there come up more 3D virtual programs, then it is even possible to move them aside in a virtual space. Well, they have to have 3D insights. As I said, there are coming up more 3D virtual programs as well. So that could be dedicated in that one. But if we look at other things, we all know that there is much more than what is said in books. If you look at pictures, if you look at drawings, and you look at the specimens, or in the first place, the intact cadaver, well, there is always the matter of fat, less or more, or in the fat, do we find the nerve, for instance? We always have to deal with biological variation in a larger specimen and a smaller specimen, comparisons as well. And we go for tissue recognition, and also the haptic experience. That is something that is really important. Okay, how thick is thick? How stiff is it? Or how weak is it? If it is more or less comparable, because most of the time, of course, they are fixated specimen. But if you're working with fresh, then that is even more important. And you also have the matter of colorization, but also with the latest fixation methods, also that is more or less overcome. One of the learning goals could be dexterity. It's not so important for us because that is, we don't assess them on that. We assess them with pro sections and not on creating a specimen themselves. And of course, there are also other learning goals like being part of a group, doing group work and collaborative thinking, helping each other, like in the Google Docs document. Okay, I think you're right. This could be it, or etc. And also, of course, the part of the ethical use of animal tissues. And there are probably much more, or other ones, or different ones that are your specific learning goals, because every institute or and even differences between courses could focus on different learning goals. And then it is a matter of that you have to slice up your course or your teaching in smaller parts and see that the learning goals that you are wanting to reach are being addressed by teaching instruments that really fit them. So if you just want to give a general overview, then a lecture is fine, and it's probably the best instrument there is. If you want them to learn nomenclature and they're all bored by reading the books, then you might, if you have time, create an e-learning program about it, or a small instruction how the language works in general. So you have to really look at the learning goals and what do you want to achieve with that, and are you actually achieving that? And also that, of course, there are many things that need to be made, created, designed. So you also have to pick out the ones that are the most important and that you can maybe use in different courses with maybe a slightly different annotation. Okay, what do you already have? Maybe you're using it, maybe you're not using it. What is on the market, free or for sale? And what is not there? And can you make it? And that's, for instance, and that's why I showed you the e-learning on the anatomy of the pig. Pig anatomy is not the one that is prominent on the market, but it's still an important part of our farm animal health track. So that was the reason I thought, okay, then let's focus on the pig and create an e-learning program on that. Because if I want to do the horse food, I probably can buy 5 different programs from that. And it's also important to realize, is there any time to make it? Because making this is quite time consuming. We're lucky that we have a good multimedia department creating the basis, the fundamentals of it, the constructs of it, and that we just deliver them, that we just first have a talk on how we want to what we want to see, the overview, the different subparts, and how deep, how many layers we have to add to that. And then it's a matter of pictures, taking photographs, coloring them in, and have the right names with the right color. And then the program is being created for us, and then it's just a matter of seeing whether or not it's everything is correct. So it is, but it's still also for us, it's really time consuming, and so you have to beware that you do the ones that are really, really necessary. And then you leave the one with the last one is, and what has to be done on campus and how have to do it. And also this one is the campus time can probably be minimized because you remove all the, I would say redundant stuff, but the redundant stuff is maybe the most important stuff, because those are the questions that they have to answer before and during your practical to really grab what is going on. But they can do that in that, let's say, Google document on Teams. And what they have to be done on campus is getting the realization how it really looks like, or what it means, or what it meant, what they wrote down in that Google document. And that's also what we got back from the students. Okay, now we have a correct visualization of it, but I still don't see it because they have difficulty of translating what they wrote down to the actual 3D situation. And that is something we have to focus on to do on campus. And that can be in a little bit shorter time, but it has to be very intensive, and the students have to be prepared themselves really well, so that we can, or they can reach the learning goals that we want them to reach. So it's a lot of work, and also we, for the next 2 weeks, will be really busy making our new teaching in the 3 years that we will start up again, online, compatible, and the practicals really fit for the shorter time and for the goals that we want to reach. And but I hope that we can do it in a less let's say, call it fight, flight, fright mode, that in a little bit more relaxed way, that we can actually enjoy what we're doing. Because I think that was part, we were proud of what we did, but if we really enjoyed the hazard of making the teaching, working from home with internet that is not always as quick as that we would like to have, that's something to be seen.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this, and thank you all for joining.
Okay, thank you. We'll have questions and answers discussion later. We'd like to move on now to our next speaker, who's talking about SARS Covid-19 Caribbean style at Ross University. Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine, and Dr. Melania Crisan from University of Ross, St. Kitts, and Nevis. Please, Dr. Crisan, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. It's nice to see you all, even though we are far away from each other, but we just need to adapt. I think this is the key of evolution, adaptability. Thank you, Dr. Sampaio, for organizing this, and thank you, Dr. Wolschrijn, for your interesting presentation. Now, I will present how we manage the situation a little bit on another part of the world. Okay, so just a geographical position. We are part of the Leeward Islands, and we are here in the Caribbean. And this is just an image with our campus and our location. Why do I mention this geographical position? Because based on our location, some rules were different. And basically, what is interesting is the fact that Ross University School of Medicine, it's focused on an accelerated DVM program. It is accredited by the AVMA accreditation, and basically we have 3 flexible start dates. We have a term that starts in January, another one in May, and another one in September. And the students will do their first 7 semesters of preclinical training on the island, on the campus, and afterwards they will be distributed in 30 schools that are affiliated and accredited by the AVMA, and these institutions are either in the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland. And because of this management, basically we had many other factors to consider. Also, to understand a little bit better how things are organized, I wanted to detail a little bit the structure of the academic year at RUSVM. So each semester is made out of 15 full academic weeks that include the week of the final exams. And basically, in between these terms, we have a total of 7-week breaks. Okay. The gross anatomy modules, they are delivered to the first and the second semester students. And starting from this moment, I will refer to these courses as J1 and J2. And each course has 4 credits, and usually our classes have 180 students. And as I was saying earlier, we have 3 intakes per year. So we have a lot of students to work with. Now, in terms of the COVID-19 in the Caribbean, I put here the latest updates that were like a few days ago, August 19. And here is our island, St. Kitts and Nevis. And what we can see here is that we had a total of 17 cases. And basically, when all this pandemic started, the island went into a lockdown, a very, very strict lockdown position. And the government and the administration were able to keep the cases very, very well controlled. We have no deaths. And currently, we have no active cases. Still, the island is closed, so the borders are not open for commercial airlines. And if you want, there are some ways, especially for residents, to get back on the island, but a 2-week quarantine period is mandatory in an institutionalized facility, and also you have to be COVID negative. You need to have a PCR test, which is COVID negative, and it's not older than 72 hours prior entering the country. So saying this is another chart showing us the evolution of the COVID. Again, the St. Kitts and Nevis is represented by this whitish line, and I hope you can see my mouse and you can track it. And basically, we are here at the bottom of the graph. We had those 17 cases, and they were under control. They all recovered, and then we had no positive case afterwards. So we are like in a little bubble from this point of view. Now, what happened with our students when this situation emerged? So first of all, on March 13, 2020, all students, they were encouraged to return home for the rest of the spring semester, which ended on April 17th. And we allowed them like 5 days to do this transition, to decide what they want to do, if they want to stay on island or if they want to go home. And then we started the online teaching on March 18. We use the platform, we use Canvas, and this is just a screenshot with the Canvas for the GA2, for example, where I'm a course coordinator. And for these courses, we have materials, like we have PDFs for the lab part, for the lab support. We have all the classes that are recorded. And then we also have extra materials such as videos with describing pro sections, so that the students have access to multiple materials. Of course, we have the regular books that are used in teaching anatomy in all the AVMA accredited schools, but we also have these extra materials for them. And they also have access to some apps, especially the G1 for the large animal limbs. One of my colleagues created a nice app for the iPads. All our students have their own iPad, and they use it a lot for studying and also for their exams. So what we did when we moved on to this online teaching for the last month of the spring semester, basically they used all the PDFs and the materials that they had for the labs. The lectures were online. We used the WebEx classrooms to give lectures. And then, of course, we answered to all their questions via email. We try to prepare extra materials for their exam reviews, because usually they are entitled to have an exam review after each exam, and then all the exams, the rest of the exams were passed online. So due to this COVID situation, huge changes occurred for the summer semester, and they affected a lot the academic curriculum. And just like I was saying earlier, the students had to leave the island, the borders are closed, so it's basically everything happened from distance. So the common decision was to postpone the gross anatomy modules until the coming semester, which will start now on September 6th. So basically during the summer, we didn't teach anatomy. The topics were replaced with other topics that are lecture-based. Our J1 and J2 are very heavy in lab components. And again, because of this, we will have different cohorts in each semester. So basically for the fall 2020 semester, we'll have 2 cohorts of students for J1 and 1 for J2. And consequently, for the following semester in the spring, 21, we'll have 1 cohort for J1 and 2 cohorts for J2. And this is happening just because we have 3 intakes of students per year. So because of this, there is a superposition between the students. Now, I will talk about each course a little bit individually, because we had a different approach for them, just because the decision based on the negotiation with the government and everything was that not all students can return on campus in the fall. So basically, Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine had to decide which terms out of 7 will return on campus. And the decision was that the terms 3, 6, and 7 that have a high lab component will return on campus on a progressive in a progressive way, and the rest of the terms they will continue to do everything online. So being done the fact that gross anatomy 1 is taught for the first semester students, it means that it will be entirely online, and it was organized in 2 lectures and 2 virtual labs on a weekly basis. And for the online lectures, we'll continue to use the Cisco WebEx meeting rooms. And for the interactive virtual labs, basically our plan is to do live streaming of pro sections to offer the students multiple views of specimens, and also to offer them as many extra resources such as diagrams, illustrations, virtual 3D representations. They have access on Veeam, so they have access to EAVA, and of course our pre-recorded videos. So we want to make sure that even though the G1 will be entirely taught online, they have as much support and as many resources as possible to visualize things and to understand them and to apply them further in the clinical part. In terms of assessing, the entire J1 module will be assessed online, and we will just continue our current practice. And for the lab exams and also for the final exam, we'll have multiple choice and fill in the blank questions. Basically, we will offer them images of different tagged cadaveric tissues, and we can offer them 1 or more just to help them with the view. Maybe we'll offer them like 2 different views to make sure that they can understand it better. And as for the online assessments, all of them will be subject to the proctoring system. And here it's just a more detailed slide explaining how we are doing this. And basically, and this is what was happening also during the remaining part of the spring semester and the summer semester, we are proctoring exams in a real time. And we use a combination of the ExamSoft platform and the Cisco WebEx meeting rooms. we have volunteer proctors, which include staff or faculty, and basically the students, they have to download their exam 24 hours prior to the exam, and then they need to join the WebEx room like 20 minutes prior to the exam. And each semester was divided in small batches, and each proctor had to supervise a batch of roughly 25 students, let's say in between 21 to 25. In the beginning of each exam, the proctor had to do the roll call, and during that time, the student had to present the ID to show the general area, and also they have been instructed what items are allowed or they are not allowed to have next to them. And once the roll call was done, each WebEx section was recorded, and afterwards, of course, the students were monitored in real time, and all the discussions and everything were done via the chat. The chat was saved and submitted after the exam to the exam center, and all the proctors, they communicated via Microsoft Teams, and we had live online support via Microsoft Teams offered by the exam center staff. And at the end of each exam, an incident report was created, saved, and submitted to the exam center in a secured folder. So we try to be as professional as possible and as consequent as possible, and just to make sure that the students are supervised as good as possible. And I would really like to offer a shout out for our exam center team, which was great, and it was a lot of work behind this, and we were able to finish this summer term in very good conditions related to exams. Okay, now the second component, the gross anatomy 2, for the fall semester, basically it will be a hybrid course. And as I was saying earlier, only the students from the 7th, the 6th, and the 3rd semester will return on campus, and they will start in this order because the 7th semester students have a high load of clinical labs. And the circumstances are very, very specific. They will have to go through multiple COVID tests at regular intervals. They will be quarantined in the dorms for 2 weeks under security surveillance. And the students that are taking the GA2 terms, they are expected to be back on the island on week 6, which is around October 14. And after a 2-week quarantine, they will be allowed to have access on campus, which will be around October 28. So almost like half of the term will be online and half of the term will be on site. That's why I was saying that we'll have a hybrid teaching style. And for the first 7 weeks, basically we'll follow the same module that I described earlier for G1 with live streaming labs and online lectures. And starting with week 8, the GA2 labs will be on campus in the labs, but the lectures will continue to be online and, of course, for social distancing purposes. Now, how do we plan to manage the labs in our lab? Of course, we'll have to follow the standard operating procedures, to use specific PPE equipment, such as the lab coat, the surgical face mask. The students will have their own gloves, they will have the goggles, and the use of facial visors is still under discussions. We plan to use the entire lab surface, which is about 100 by 40 feet, and to have 90 students at once. And of course, the tables will be spaced out accordingly. And we also plan to have a specific way of students entering and leaving the lab. And basically, we'll have 3 main entrances or 3 main doors. And we'll have like 30 students entering each door. And we are still debating how to manage the out-of-hour work because, of course, the students are interested to have access after hours to the lab and to work on their cadavers or just to learn, to study. But again, this is under discussion because of personnel management and time management and all that. As for the examination for GA2, for the first 7 weeks, all the assessments will be online, and afterwards, the lab examinations, they will be on site, but we also have a type of examination that are called block exams, and those will continue to be online, and the final exam, it will be online. Now, what are the major challenges of this type of teaching? Of course, like Dr. Wolschrijn said earlier, internet access and speed. We struggled with that, especially on the island. Sometimes we have power outage, sometimes we have internet issues. The bandwidth is not the greatest, so that's a problem. Time management. Working from home can be challenging from a time management point of view and from a self-motivation point of view. And again, this might be a struggle for the students from this perspective. The technology struggle, like we are lucky because our students have access, to a laptop. Each of them have an iPad. Each of them has an iPad, they have the phones, but still, in general, when we think about online learning challenges, the technology struggle, it is a real issue. And even if it's the last one, but we consider that is the major one, it's the lack of access to the cadavers. So possibly we'll create some surveys and all that with our students just to compare this online teaching versus on-site teaching and the impact that the lack of access to the cadavers has on their education. I'm sure that after this pandemic there will be a lot of studies focused on that, and maybe this will highlight the importance of dissection in anatomy, because right now, especially in human anatomy, there is a huge trend of giving up dissection and using 3D and all that. But in our opinion, and also, students confirm that they miss being in the lab. They need to be in a lab to see and understand better the information. But
excuse me, Melania, please take 1 minute and finish up.
Yes, I'm done, actually. Yeah, we will see how things are going. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have questions later at the specified time. Dr. Sampaio.
Okay, then now I'm a pleasure to introduce Dr. Rob McCorkell. He's the Associate Dean and Associate Professor from University of Calgary, Canada, and he was talking about teaching gross anatomy in a pandemic, the Calgary experience. Rob?
Okay, now let's... I presume everybody can see this now. Okay, well, similar, I'm struck by how similar the experience has been for my colleagues. It was pretty much the same for us.
Excuse me, can you enlarge the screen, please?
I have it in full screen right now. How do I enlarge it?
I don't know. That may be all. Thank you.
Sorry about that. No, it's in full screen mode right now. It's as big as my screen can get physically. So I hope this works. Anyway, we were given about a week's notice, and then the students were ordered off campus, and everybody was at home. For us, the scenario was we had some fortunate circumstances that mitigated the situation. We were very close to the end of our gross anatomy instruction for that first year class. We had completed 58 of the 68 scheduled sessions. So what we had left were a few of the minor species, and by that I'm talking we have lectures on reptiles, lab animals, and fish. So we weren't able to get to those. Also, as a regular part of our instruction, we have, the podcasts that everybody's that has been mentioned already, where we use these on virtual video presentations, so we also had those prepared and available to carry on and work our way through the last few lectures and sessions that we had left. Okay. The process then was that we used Zoom. That was the technology that was available on our campus. We also have the Desire to Learn interface, and so that was the other method of communication. And so all of the lectures went to the Zoom platform, and we were able to interact with the class and answer their questions. But we had a problem with the dissection time. As has been noted, all the students were off campus, so there was no way to continue with the dissections. And we also had a challenge coming up with the final exam, because this environment had changed the format for that final exam, and it was going to now be online, open book, and our provosts was being very concerned about the student situations, and so they were given very large windows of opportunity for the students to complete those exams online. So that was a new environment for everybody. So we looked at that, and we replaced our lab dissection time with assignments. And the assignments we hopefully were to help drive the students back to their reference material, their textbooks, and the other materials that we'd supplied them, so they could work their way through some challenges that we would pose for them to help them learn and study the anatomy that remained. And as I said, this was also done with an ulterior motive, because we felt that this was probably the direction we were going to have to go for the final assessment in the course. And so that was our strategy. It was, and I think everybody has noted this, but it was quite an interesting time, and I have to compliment my colleagues. There was a lot of urgency to this. There was a lot to cover, and everybody really just pulled in the harness together and got the work done. But we shouldn't underestimate the effort that it took to overcome the challenge. So the original exam was. What we normally have would be 50% would be a written exam, and 50% would have been a practical exam, where we would be using fresh and fixed specimens. And probably familiar to many of you, I call it the musical chairs exam, but everybody has a few minutes at each station, and then a bell sounds and everybody moves around the room. That's our traditional format for the practical exams. So also of importance was the written exam tended to be multiple choice questions. We do have there's multiple formats in there. People use short answer and some other question formats, but over the years, it seems to have become much more oriented to using multiple choice questions. And the multiple choice questions, when we examined them, were ones that could be very readily looked up or answered if you had time to find your reference material. So the situation compromised our exam format massively. And of course, the practical exam was not possible. So that's was us relying more heavily on the assignments. And what did the assignments look like? Well, we worked hard to create questions that required interpretation and application of anatomical knowledge. So these kind of questions are ones that many of us avoid when writing exams, because They're a challenge to mark. They take the students a long time to complete, but this was the direction that we had to go. So we created questions that were going to require students to interpret and apply their anatomical knowledge. And we had basically 2 large assignments prior to what was going to become the final exam, and challenged the students with questions of this nature. And it was interesting. Our initial response from the students was it took them a massive amount of time to complete these assignments. They were reporting that it was taking them, 6 and 12 hours to complete the assignments. Also, as we suspected, marking them was a significant job. We are, and unlike some of the earlier presenters, we are, I think, fortunate in that we have a relatively small class size to work with. But even then, there was a significant increase in the workload to grade these assignments. But we went ahead with it. This was the nature of our final exam, was just another series of those types of questions. And at the end of all of that, we had a post-course survey of the students, and this was a surprising result to me, and a relatively positive outcome of this whole experience, was that they found that these assignments, the students were actually very positive about them. Despite the effort that they took from them, they recommended that we keep these type of large assignments as part of the course in the future. They said they found that this really helped them integrate their knowledge. Many mentioned the fact that it actually got them to become more familiar with the reference materials that we provide, which made us happy because we put a lot of effort into that material. So it was all generally a positive outcome, despite our concerns that this was going to be maybe not as well received as we had hoped. So that's something that came out, I guess, as the silver lining in the dark cloud, is that we uncovered another method of interacting with our students that we're probably going to try and maintain in the program going forward once we get into a more normal circumstance. So the plan for the upcoming academic year, we're heading into this with I believe courage and optimism. We'll wait and see what happens. But the University of Calgary has, on a general campus-wide basis, adopted a blended instructional model. So that means that both in-person and online instruction is available, and that we take that to allow us, our in-person lab instruction will be permitted. There are some restrictions that we have to follow to be able to offer that, and that is we have to now limit the number of students in any class, and follow and use of the protective equipment. And if we're able to do that, then we can carry on and deliver the practical portions or the dissection portions of our course in a similar fashion to what we had done before. All of the lectures will be using Zoom, and we have the D2L Desire to Learn or course management system that's on campus. So those are the tools that we're going to be using to deliver the course. We consider the hands-on dissection as part of our program to be very important. And
excuse me, 1 minute, please.
Okay, and so we're going to make a valiant effort to maintain it. It's the beginning process of them developing the psychomotor skills and spatial perception that they're going to need to resolve in their mind in 3 dimensions. So this is a summary of how this year is going to go. We're going to divide the class, teach everything twice, groups of 5, widely separated in the lab. They'll be working over fresh and fixed specimens. And if we get a recrudescence of the disease, the plan is to suspend teaching and then extend the winter semester into spring and maybe even early summer until we complete the content. And so that's our hope.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. Next will be Dr. Sampaio presenting veterinary anatomy after COVID-19 in 3 different universities and vet schools. With that, Dr. Sampaio, please take the floor.
Okay, Bob, thank you for the introduction. Let's see, this is the Okay, so good morning or good afternoon or good evening for everybody. And I will share the current situation in 3 vet schools from Rio, and then we'll see what is happening in these 3 different vet schools. Then Brazil is a huge country with 26 states and the federal district, and we are here. Rio de Janeiro is this tiniest state in the southeast, and although the Rio de Janeiro is a small state, we have 92 cities in the states. And the vet schools we will talk about today is located, the UFF is located in the city of Niterói. It's in the metropolitan area. And the Unifeso is located in the mountain town. It's a small town, and the other one is the Union, is located in Itaboraí. This is the countryside. The dissemination of coronavirus in Brazil started in the early 2020, and Rio de Janeiro closed the schools and university on March the 16th. Then we start the online classes after March 19th, because the government allows us to the online classes only after this date. However, these 3 schools adopted different procedures. Then UFF, the Fluminense Federal University, paralyzed the activities due to the expectation to return to the regular classes in the 2nd semester. But during this period of the 1st semester, we held some online meetings with the students concerning applied anatomy. We did not continue the program, the regular program of the anatomy course. The other 2 vet schools, the Unifeso and Union, have continuous your regular course, and with online classes. And during the online classes, the students had access to images and videos in the attempts to minimize the lack of practical classes. However, the plan about the practical classes is to have this on the 2nd semester. And so we are talking about the methodology that we intend to use. Here on the left, you can see the data from Brazil about COVID, and on the right, you can see the data about the states of the Southeast region, and then you can see Rio. And on the top, you can see the number of cases in Brazil, and you can see that the curve is still increasing in Brazil. And on the bottom, you can see the data about the deaths by COVID in Brazil. Then you can see that the curve is still increasing. But when you see the Rio on the top of the right side, the number of cases starts to stay in the flat curve. It's the same thing for the deaths by COVID in the Rio. This is the purple line indicated by the arrow. And so The state government authorized the return of practical classes on August the 4th, establishing some limitations like distance at least of 1.5 meters between the students, the mandatory use of PPA, and then we expected to start the face-to-face classes on the second semester. But the problem is that the city laws not allow us to start the face-to-face classes. Then we start only online. For now, we're just starting only online classes in the 3 universities. But while youth will start the first semester now on September 4th, the other 2 will start the second semester. Then UFF has a gap to fill in the near future because we don't have the first semester at this year. Then we make a survey with 157 students from these 3 universities, and you can see on the top here that 84.7% of them are not feeling comfortable to return to face-to-face practical classes now. And when the proposal is returning with the small groups at the time, this number drops to 55.4%. According to the students' perception, the quality of teaching learning of the course without face-to-face practical classes was bad or very bad for 79.6% of them. And finally, 72% of the students feel low or very low motivation to take only online classes. So we conclude that all our efforts for supplying the lack of the face-to-face activities by videos and images of the specimens was not enough. So as soon as the government of the cities allows us to start the face-to-face activities, we plan to do in the safest way we can. So this is what we are intending to do after the authorized for face-to-face classes. This is a layout of an anatomical lab of Unifeso from the mountain town. We are planning to keep the students in the X locations. Then we have, this is an old anatomical style. We have the fixed tables, and then we have to keep the students in the X location. Then we have 15 tables in the lab. This way, we will keep the students. We'll keep the distance among the students. We range for about 2 or 2.3 meters. Then the students will come into for one door, the entrance door. We have 2 doors. Then the students will come into to the lab through the entrance door, and they will follow. They will follow the sequence of the tables like a route. And then they will see on the table the same specimens that we shown on the videos in the online classes. Then we can handle the 3D specimens. And then we can see the roots. And then you can see that the students will not cross the way of the other students. And we would just have 1 student per table. And then the expectation that the students stay about 5 minutes in each table. Then we can have one student, when 1 student go out, another one came in. Then professors will be around to clarify students' doubts. And after the last table, the students will come out by the exit door. This is a view of the lab from one of the corners. Then you can see the entrance door and the exit doors, the tables. And then Fortunately, we have many exhausting system and windows all around, and you can have a renovation around. This is the view of the entrance door and the table number 1. Just after the entrance, you can see the arrows on the floor and the axis, and then you can see the table 1, 2, and 3. Then the students will go in this way. And here, just before the exit, you can see the table 15 and its X, and the arrow indicating the exit door.
Excuse me, 1 minute, please.
This is one specimen of the canine thorax with the pins and the legends. It will be on the table. This is another species. There's a stifle joint with the pins and the legends. And our expectation is that it will be a safe and comfortable face-to-face classes for students, keeping the distance of at least 2 meters between them. The students will handle real 3D specimens, the same that we have on videos. And this practical class should motivate the students to move forward with the online lectures. And I would like to thank you, everybody, to attend the meeting, and the 3 vet schools, UFF and Unifeso and Union.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sampaio. We're scheduled now for questions and answer discussion. I'm going to let you handle this. I'm going to suggest we do 15 minutes right now rather than 30 to try and maintain a little schedule.
It's okay.
What do you think?
Okay. I agree.
Good.
Then I will introduce Camila. Camila has the questions from the YouTube chat. Camila?
Hi everyone. Are you listening to me right now? Is the sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all the presenters for the amazing speeches today. And now we have the first question for Professor Wolschrijn from Karen Hirschberg Breaker. And she's asking if Professor Wolschrijn can provide examples of prompts used for the discussions with the Google Docs.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I have, if I can provide examples of what?
Prompts used for the discussions with the Google Docs.
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
She's asking if you can provide examples of summaries that you use for the discussions with the Google Docs. Examples of exercises or what you use for the discussion.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we started easy because in our practical manual there are many questions and which they have to look up or look at find in the specimens, but also have to look up in the study material. And what we did was take those questions out and provide that in as a Google Docs document. So, and in the long run, we created also new questions if we thought that the original ones that were in the practical manual were not really fit to be answered only on theoretical grounds. So it was basically part of our existing teaching material. First, we took it out and make it as a new fresh document.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is actually for you too, from Christian McGee. She asked if you could give more information about your spot exams.
What Robert was telling about the exams, that what we're doing was basically also what we are doing. We have pro sections on the table. Students have 3 minutes of time to answer 3 questions. So first is something added to a pin, or the pin is pointed in, and then the first question is describe as specifically as possible what is marked here, and then the B and C question is something about function or dysfunction, or about agonist, antagonist, etc. And that is what we replaced online in the online examination program that we are using.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And now we have a question for Professor Sampaio, and it's asking how many students in total for each one of the on-site classes, and how long that you're going to give the students to expose with the real specimen.
Yeah, for the first semester, we don't have face-to-face practical. Then you don't have students exposed to real specimens. And we have about 70 or 80 students in the total class. And then if you think about 5 minutes in each table for 15 students, we'll spend 75 minutes, I think so, for 15 students. Then we'll have like a route, one student's come in, another one come out. And if you think about every table, then the students will expose for the real specimens for 75 minutes or 80 minutes or something else.
Thank you, Professor. We have another question for you from Thelma Masuku. She's asking, how many students are you planning to place inside the laboratory, and with how many teachers?
Yeah, it's 15 students for two teachers, 2 professors. It's just the 15 tables, 1 student per table. Then they will make like a rotation in these 15 tables.
Okay, we have another question for you, Professor. They're saying that it was a really clear and good plans, and they're asking you if you could tell us where the students will be putting their staff before lab.
I can hear you at the end of the questions. Where the students put what?
Their staff before lab. I think they're talking about their material before entering the lab.
Yeah, we have outside the lab, we have some shelves. Then they can leave the stuff on the shelves. They are allowed to use the cell phone to see the videos when they are looking to the specimens or the pads or something, but the backpack and the rest of the material, they could leave outside the lab.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I'm waiting. Okay, another question for you. They would like to ask Dr. Melania about the ExamSoft. How was that platform? Can give us some more details. So this question is for Dr. Melania Crisan.
Yes.
Just to repeat here, I'm just waiting here for, because wait a minute, they're putting the question again, so I can read it. Just waiting here a second. Sorry for that.
No worries. It's okay.
Okay, so the question is about the soft exam and how was that platform can give us some more detail. So the question is about the platform and how you use it, how it works.
Okay, so basically we have an entire team from the exam center, and they are responsible for organizing all these. And we use ExamSoft for our exams in general, like to prepare the exams, to introduce the questions and all that. And there is a part of the software, Exemplify, that is on the students' iPad or laptop or whatever they use, and basically it's this type of platform that we use for our exams. There were other ideas to use the examination platform from Canvas, but it didn't go that well. And just the software itself, the ExamSoft, has a part that is used by the professor when they create the questions, and another part that is used by the students when they download the exam. They go to the exam, they answer the questions, and then they upload the exam. And basically, once the exams are uploaded and all that, we have access to the exams and to correct them and to assess them. And as I was saying, there are two platforms that were used, and one was for the exam itself, and the other one was for proctoring. And for proctoring, each student had to log in on the WebEx meetings room. And when, for example, if I was a proctor, then I will have to start the session on the WebEx and to supervise each student, to do the roll call, but that is just for proctoring and supervising the students. But for the ExamSoft, it's an entire platform that is basically focused on creating exams and taking exams. Yes, I hope it's clear enough. Like I don't know more technical terms, but I can try to find out, and then whoever has more questions, we can talk about it in more details.
We use this is Bob Henry. We used ExamSoft at LMU for our written exams. It's nice in the fact that it's all computer driven. Once you put the questions in and the students answer, the exam is over, you get feedback on each question. How many students got it right, how many got it wrong, and so on. So it's a nice tool to help you evaluate your questions as well.
Yeah, it allows you to evaluate from a statistical point of view also how well the exam is organized, if the questions need some adjustments, and it's a very nice tool for a feedback for your work as well, not only assessing the students, but also assessing the quality of the exams.
Good.
Okay, so the next question, first of all, I want to say that everybody on YouTube chat is thanking for the answers. And we have a question here that it adds to all the professors, so it'll be interesting to hear all of your point of views. And it's any words of advice / suggestions for best developing useful assignments. And also, Karen Hirschberger-Breaker is thanking Dr. McCorkell and saying that it was interesting learning more about the assignments that were put. If you want, I can repeat the question, and it is any words of advice for best developing useful assignments.
I think what is important now is to make sure that we can make our students understand all these details of anatomy, which are very visual, to make sure that they understand their applicability. And basically, I think the best solution and what we plan to do is to create questions, like sample questions in the beginning of each lab, so that they will get used with how they will be evaluated, and how the question will be formulated and what to expect when they will see. Because unfortunately, they won't be able. Usually, when we have the lab exams, the students go in the lab and they have specimens with specific tagged structures. Well, now everything will be based on a picture, right? So I think it's important to make sure that we train them properly, to give them exercises to make them think and to make them have a different approach. Even if they don't have access to the cadavers, and also, to suggest them different programs, 3D programs that can help them understand. But from my perspective, the most important thing is to make sure that you have very clear learning outcomes, very clear objectives, and you create very, very clear exercises for them so that they can train their brain for how to learn for anatomy under these circumstances. Thank you.
If I may, we all are quite used to giving kind of assignments to the students, but also before this pandemic. For instance, in our third year, we have locomotory system, and to prevent that students open up the dissection guide for the first time when they come into the dissection hall, we just removed the dissection guide, and what we asked from the students is that they write or create or design in the group that they also perform the dissection with their own dissection guide. And what we give them are, of course, the terms that are to have to be included in the practical, and also some, that can be anatomical questions like how is the front limb suspended to the thorax, and make a protocol for that. But it can also be, let's say, a surgical approach, and which kind of muscles, nerves, and important structures will they encounter if they will enter to the hip from, let's say, the lateral side, the ventral side, the dorsal side, whatever. And based on that, they have to study the books, the e-learning programs and everything that we provide with, including also then the plastinates. And then they come in with a dissection guide. And I'm not sure if I can teach the practicals, the actual practicals of locomotory system, because that's in winter, and I don't know how it will be here in winter. But I still can think of that we will ask the students to create those dissection guides, and that they can come back or come in then at the dissection hall at a later time. So you can also think of those kinds of assignments that they actually are doing beforehand, doing the 3D work, trying to do the 3D work, and then have the actual dissection and the visualization of that 3D in class later on. And then the advantage is that you have 2 time points where they have to look at the material, and that they probably will understand it much more and better than before. And as I said, we have experience with that, and really for more than 10 years now, and it really works well in that third year class. And yeah, we can just move on with that as well.
I don't know if we still have time, but I would like to add something. Just like Dr. Wolschrijn said earlier, we also have for students a handout with the main objectives for each lab and the list of terms. And also at the end of each chapter, they have specific exercises to go through and to try to think about that. And as I was saying, when we start the lab, we have specific special stations, 1 or 2, where they have a structure that is tagged and a specific question similar to the one that they will get during the lab exam. So they need to study prior coming to the lab. They need to be acquainted to what they will be doing in that specific lab. And then they can always test their knowledge by using those exercises, like written exercises, or by trying to answer to the questions related to the tagged specimens. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some assignments to add to the platforms, and we have some questionnaires and some list of terms that they can look for this in the books. Basically, we want to push the students to study by themselves, because they are themselves at home. Then we try to push them to look for the books and to make some draws of the specimens, to try to put the 3D images of the structures in mind. I think that's the best thing. I don't want to waste too much time here. Rob?
Yeah, I think we need to come back to this if we have time later on. And let's go ahead and go back and start the presentation number 1. Marco, you want to take over?
Yeah, so we pass for the oral presentations. Then we have 2 oral presentations today. And the first one is the veterinary morphology teaching at the Veterinary Faculty in Slovenia during COVID-19 epidemic. Dr. Valentina Kubale from University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. Valentina, you can say again the university because it's hard for me. Valentina?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. And do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present our mostly online teaching during COVID epidemic in University of Ljubljana, anatomy and also histology, which we found very successful. Some people say that Slovenia, which anatomically resembles to a chicken, or some other chicken exists, lies in the heart of the Europe. It is very diverse and beautiful and surrounded by beautiful countries. And one of them is Italy. And due to high peak of COVID-19 in Italy, Slovenian government reacted really fast. So we started lockdown on March 13th. We were in quarantine for almost 2 months, and our semester is ending on June 2nd, and we could extend some teaching to June 19th in very restricted manners, only for practical purposes. Albeit extensive digital platform existing at the University of Ljubljana, our university was not really heavily promoting online teaching, so we didn't have any previously recorded lectures, clips, e-modules, so it was up to us to create our own resources. At that time, we had general histology module. From anatomy of domestic animals, we had bones of the head, basically all of the head, muscles, innervation, vascularization, hortospachnology, and also anatomy of laboratory and exotic animals as an elective subject. I will start with general histology first. So at that Friday, March the 13th, I started to make my first recordings. It took me a day to connect my PowerPoint presentations and the computer in the classroom with our microscope with the camera connected, so I could make tutorials, including PowerPoint presentations and videos from the slides we are normally using, so I could use them on Monday. Students got them in the Moodle platform and could look at them, and we asked them to draw and label them and return all of their drawings by 2 or 3 days. So that was 65 mails minimally per week, and we were answering all the questions. So this is the examples. We used the PowerPoint slides. I was also, while speaking, drawing and typing on them. And then in between, I used microscopy. They were 45 minutes to 1 hour long, and the students were really great, returning all these beautiful tasks back, asking questions, and I realized the communication in this case is really, really important, especially for the students who have special needs. Besides that, we also made pictures of the same slides we are using, labeled them, and gave them available in the Moodle platform. All the lectures were via Zoom platform. So this is our Moodle platform, how it looks like. We have different subjects like histology for the exercises, movies, all the pictures, all the PowerPoints, everything is there for them all the time. I have also had some special histology with University of Zagreb at their English teaching program. So we did the same for the lymphatic tissue practicals. They used Microsoft Teams. We uploaded the videos, and they also returned me back really nice work. Our practical exam would be normally 40 microscopes where they would recognize tissues and structures. We couldn't do that, but we could be face-to-face. We use digital interactive screens and we change slides every 45 seconds. So per slide, that was also a time which we need to find out which one is good. 10 students per classroom wearing masks, disinfection and everything. There were good and bad things about this type of work. We found out they had really good practical exam knowledge, very comparable to previous years, and they really appreciated our effort we put in. We could, of course, now use these clips also for next time or for inverted or flipped learning situation. But they don't microscope that much, and they were not able to go through the slides actually as they would normally do. And of course, for us, it was really time consuming. So there were many challenges which we were facing. We really have to do fast to react, find a way to do it because we didn't have any existing platforms before. We were not equipped. I was also trying GoPro camera. That didn't work out well. We did have theoretical support from the faculty, university, but not really the practical ones. We didn't even know how we will entrance the faculty through all these times. So for the future, we already scanned our glass slides with the digital scanner from the Medical Faculty of Ljubljana. We are now labeling them, and we will also put them in the Moodle environment for the students. If needed, we will make histology tutorials for Module 2, quizzes in Moodle platform, or maybe we will even start using the Microsoft Teams. So this is how the NPD Viewer 2 program looks like. All our slides in a small magnification. We could really use them in high magnification and label them. So in anatomy, there was a different story. We had much different opinions of how to handle the situation and not really guidelines from the faculty. So we did, as also Claudia said, postponed the practical part and also split teaching. So we first gave them theory, literature available on Moodle. Students would address what to study. 5 of us were with students each week on weekly consultation. If they had something, we had many meetings. Then Zoom lectures. We also written them chapters and uploaded them in Moodle. We used some of the digital platforms, and when we realized it's not going to be practical, we started to make movies, especially Anna and Milan and other two co-workers. In Zoom, it was not really perfect what we normally used because the resolution was really bad. So in pair, we found out that it was the best to do them in pairs on fixed specimens and with high-end mobile phone camera, or sometimes also using GoPro camera. And we used then videos which were also edited by Power Director software. This is also some stills of the videos shown here. When it was editing, also some subtitles were added, some other structure were added, some other information, details were really nicely seen. Then we also tried how to make live dissection of native specimens like rooster and hen. And we gave them also some practical description assignments. And the last one exercise we had in the dissection hall with mice. You can see the students were one by one dissecting all mouse, having instruction, which they got also in front, and I could not really go close to them. At that point, they could also use the dissection hall to study a little bit there under strict circumstances, and they could do practical exam there, one by one, on certain circumstances. Anatomy of laboratory and exotic animals was similar. Lectures on Zoom, seminar work on Zoom, and also practicals with live animals on Zoom. We did have some sections before, and some we will do now this year in person as we decided to. We also had some different lectures. Luckily, I have a little zoo at home, so I could do live animal exotics, but they couldn't touch it, of course. And students were very good with their presenting their work and also their animals, like this snail, on example. So there were also some positive things having anatomy like this, and also some negative. Students really appreciated the effort, and this is maybe a good point that we really will start using digital platforms and also implementing guided self-study, as EAVA also suggested us. However, of course, as you all said, gross anatomy needs learning on specimens, fixed one, plastinated, fresh ones, and to the students to dissect. We could clearly see when they were dissecting mice, they really had shortcomings. But of course, this took in this semester also very much time from the staff to prepare movies. This is an example time units of the time which were needed to make one movie. For the section of the specimen, it was 3 units, then prepare what to say there, 1 unit, filming, maybe 1.5, and then editing, checking and editing again took really a lot of time. And we have, of course, some future ideas to make different types of videos, some with introduction and guidelines, and slow demonstration videos, which would be again edited and labeled. To make a dissection movie, introduction movie for students, how to use scalpels and forceps, because of course they will not be there as much as possible, at least as was what we think. And before each practicals, we should also prepare them some instructions to come there and be prepared. They will be in small groups, 6 to 10 students, and with multiple teachers, and they will not have hands-on practicals, or this is how we are thinking of doing it, only have hands-on practicals every 5th or maybe 7th practical, and watch videos in between of the section made in between of their other 10 colleagues. So some assistant professors would be assisting students, and other ones would be filming videos in between questions, discussions, and send them to the students. So they would have both, and it would be obligatory to have at least one hand-on experience in one practical exam period. We would also need to redo how we are having osteology, which we will start in this semester by, on example, thematic tables, as Marco suggested, and then rotating among the tables and with discussion at the end, and only 2 students at the same time dissecting, if that would be possible. In video conferencing, students, if it will be on the Zoom, we would like to encourage them to be more active by using the microphone and camera. So, of course, there will be still challenges for the equipment, for the availability of specimens, for time, we should prepare plans depending on situation. We still don't know how it will be, how to behave in lockdown, semi-closed situation or usual ones. Communication of the team is very essential. We have really different opinions on that. And we are thinking of maybe reevaluating learning outcomes. Are we teaching too much details? Maybe we ask from our students so much, and it was not available on any digital platforms available. We would also like to give them to gain skill, but we don't know, we are not really testing them, so we should improve on that one as well. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and organizers for organizing this very important event.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. We'll go on now with our second oral presentation from Brazil, Laís Carmen Janeiro, Teaching and Learning Anatomical Techniques Through a Virtual Environment. Thank you. Laís, are you on? Dr. Janeiro?
Laís? Laís, can you hear me?
Dr. Sampaio, can the
she's in the room, but
can the students take care of trying to get her back, and we will take a few more questions?
Maybe if Camila, do you have more questions?
Hi, I'm just checking here. actually, we have a question for you, Professor Sampaio, and also a question for Professor McCorkell. The same question as before about the tips and advices for the assignments. And then I can ask you the question that was specifically for you, Professor Sampaio. But first, the question for Professor McCorkell, if you could answer this one, please.
Okay, sure.
Sure. Well, so this is the question on the assignments. I think for me, the creativity was the key word there. You had to try and imagine scenarios and ideas that would engage the students. And I drew back to my years in practice for that source of creativity, and just found the anatomy in the ordinary things, and challenged the students with that scenario, and for them to then apply their anatomical knowledge in ordinary things. So you could look at, for example, if you had to think of doing an epidural block in a cow for an obstetrics procedure. Imagine you're the tip of the needle that you're going to place the epidural block in, and describe the tissues that needle passes through. It's just something in practice we do a lot. But now if you imagine the anatomy, there's actually quite a bit there too, and they've studied it all. So it helps them organize their thinking. And so those are the kind of creative ideas that we found that made the questions for our assignments engaging, and gave us the positive feedback from the students. Answering those questions, though, is actually surprisingly challenging. The students have to it takes a lot of time if you start thinking about it, to provide a thorough answer for something like that.
Thank you, Professor.
Camila, I think that Laís is ready to start the presentation. Laís, can you hear me? Laís? No?
I have one question until she joins us. Have any of you used the telephone, your personal telephone, for communication with students back and forth on specific questions? If students have a question, have you had them tried calling you besides using the other products?
Not my private telephone, no. But what you can do is have a private chat or a phone call within Teams, and that is and some of the students, well, especially in tutoring, I make use of that. Yes.
Because I've used telephone. I've retired a year ago, but I've used telephone, made my telephone available for students because I wasn't into chatting and all this stuff. So it's just another option.
Yeah, well, I must admit that before this whole crisis, I'd never heard of Microsoft Teams. And within the weekend that we had in changing it into online learning, I must admit that my learning curve was vertical.
I understand.
And it's you can learn it quite quickly. And I'm always very reluctant of giving my own private number, and if there are other means of communication.
Well, that reminded me of something that we learned in the Zoom environment. This generation does like to chat. So when you give the lectures in those environments, the chat window is often very busy. Not so much audio. They don't actually ask very many questions using a microphone, but they are much more engaged. I think it relates back to their facility with texting.
Certainly.
And you need to roll the list of questions in the chat. Yeah. Laís?
Hey everyone, I'm back. Sorry, I've got some problems with my microphone. I'm back. I think I think it's gonna work now.
Okay.
1 minute. 1 minute.
So you can share your screen and then start the presentation.
Well, good morning. Hello, everyone. Are you guys hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So our program is about teaching and learning anatomical techniques through a virtual environment. It is a cooperation between the University of the State of Maranhão and University of the State of Region Tocantins of Maranhão. Maranhão is a state in Northeast Brazil. And I also have to tell you that I've got problems with my camera, so you guys won't see me, but I will do the presentation anyway. So this cooperation was between the University of the State of Maranhão, the University of the State of Tocantins region, and it was a cooperation between the teachers. They participate of the core of morphological studies from the University of the State of Maranhão, and the teachers were Karin and Josiel, Christine, Antonio, me, and the coordinator was Dr. Diego. So, like with the COVID-19, it was a big hit in Brazil, especially in our state of Maranhão. We have great numbers here. So the face-by-face classes were able anymore. So that's why we trying to looking for another environment, places for learning for our students. So faced with new human situation and technology realities, like the teachers has the talent of assisting the students in order to overcome the limits imposed by distance. So especially in our state, we have problems because all the classes were suspended, like in the other states, like the Dr. Marcos told us about Rio de Janeiro. So Maranhão was also hit by COVID-19, and we have to learn in a different way, especially like in a virtual environment, to try to pass the students the knowledge, especially about anatomic techniques. I will present for. So the teacher has to innovate, improve, and reinvent techniques to pass the knowledge for the students. The methods applied was the scripted student study, report of the development experience of a virtual learning environment. The discipline of the university studied was anatomical techniques, and the target audience was our students from postgraduate program, the animal science at the study of University WAVA, studied here in Maranhão, and the general public also, because we had only 15 students in class, but we had more than 1,200 students on this study. So the virtual room was on Google Meet with the 15 students, but we also had some rooms on YouTube. So the choice was YouTube and was organized according to the subject of the disciplines. As you can see, we have great meetings, like with the professor, host Erich Kinog from Vienna. And each meeting, one teacher talked about type of corpus preservation technique. We have great interaction between the students, like we are having now. And we have different techniques learning through the program, like taxidermy with the professor Dr. Caio from UFBA. Is also another university in Brazil. from the state of Bahia, and plastination from Dr. Rafael from University of Tufts in US, and dissection with the Dr. Eulampio Neto. He also bring us a lot of videos to show for our students about dissection, and angiotechnics with the professor Dr. Alan Paris from Unesp, is another university in Brazil from the state of São Paulo. And the conclusion is we have to learn another approach for our students to pass knowledge. And especially right now, the times that we live in, COVID-19 it's not able to classes face by face. So I think another approach able to not stop the knowledge in University of the State of Maranhão is by virtual environment, by virtual platforms like YouTube and Google Meeting. But I would like to say that our studies was the teachers showing by videos, by images, by 3D images on Google Meeting. And this was passing on YouTube for the students to see. And we have only 15 students, but on this time we hit it, like I said, more than 1,200 students. And also I would like to say that in the end of the study, the students produced articles about the techniques of anatomical preservation of the corpus of the animals. And this was the form of evaluation that we brought for this type of program. Like I said, doing articles. We produced 15 articles of our students, and I think it was a great type of sharing knowledge, and not to stopping the studies from the university I think it's the best from the students, because they won't pass much time looking for the degrees on post-graduation. So that's the type of program that we find to not stop our studies on University of State of Maranhão. So that's it, guys, and thanks.
Thank you very much.
Camila, we have questions for Valentina and for Laís.
Sorry, here. Okay, are you listening to me? Can you see me? Yes, right?
Do you have questions for Valentina or for Laís?
I'm waiting here to see if there's any questions on the YouTube chat, but for now, there are no questions.
I have a comment for Valentina. There's a good idea to put the camera on the head, the GoPro on the head.
Yeah, we use that for,
I will provide one for me.
That one was used for the anatomy specimens. You could see on one picture, but regular GoPro, old model, for taking the pictures of the screen, no go.
And then
great idea.
You can make the videos by yourself. Then you don't need another person to make the videos, and it's good.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant.
We don't have any questions, but if there's something that any of you would like to add or to ask, feel free.
We are 18 minutes ahead of the finish time. Then I will think that we can finish the presentation for today. I just ask if someone want to say something.
I have one question for Claudia. I don't know quite how to phrase this question, except it was a written communication between students and yourself, and you circled the thing saying "I thought so." What format was that? I mean, what program?
That was Google Docs. So it was Word in Google Docs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's it for me. See you all tomorrow.
Anybody want to say something before finish? No?
Thank you. Thank you for your time for organizing this, Dr. Sampaio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to thank you, everybody, to take this time to come here to say something. Rob, it's too early in Calgary.
The sun is up now.
Yeah, the difference of the time zone, but it's crazy. But we can do this, and I would like to thank the students who work hard to organizing the broadcasting and the events, and to help us to
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
To run, and then see you tomorrow.
Okay. Nice
Bye-bye.
seeing you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
See you tomorrow.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.